Richard, you're not looking at One.
Are we live? Welcome everyone to today's virtual overview and scrutiny committee hosted by Bassett District Council. Given the current challenging situation we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, new legislation has been approved that enables councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring members to be present in the committee chamber when making a decision. This keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distancing etiquette and allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. It's very important that councillors can hear each other, so I'll invite members in alphabetical order to confirm their attendance and in so doing test their broadband connection. Okay, so I'm going to start first of all with Councillor Jack Bowker.
Chair, Councillor Bowker hasn't quite joined the meeting yet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robin Carrington-Wild.
Here, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Councillor David Challoner.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Anne Cultate.
Good evening, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. We've got Councillor Clayton Tyndall here, substituting for Councillor Merriweather.
Yeah, Chair.
Thank you, Clayton. We do appreciate it when people sub last minute.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. Councillor James Nash.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Plevin.
Here, Chair.
Thanks, Claire. Councillor David Presley.
Here, Chair.
Thank you, David. Councillor Madeline Richardson.
Here, Chair. Thank you. Sorry, I'm late.
Thank you, Maddie. And myself, John Shepherd, as Chair. And Councillor Helen Tamblyn-Saville, I believe, is late. She's put her apologies in, but will join the meeting later.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Mark Watson.
Yes, here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll introduce the key officers. Stephen Brown, Head of Corporate Services.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Richard Gadsby, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Liz Whittles, Policy and Scrutiny Officer and Clerk for the meeting.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. Alison Craig, Head of Housing.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. And Linda Dorr, Meeting Facilitator.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Linda. If a number of members lose connection and the meeting becomes inquire or the live streaming for public viewing fails, I shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow connection to be re-established. Given this is a virtual meeting, there's no corporate responsibility to detail a fire procedure as we ordinarily would. However, I'd like to highlight that this committee is live streamed on social media, so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from your place of live streaming. And can I remind members to switch off their microphones when not speaking? Agenda item number 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Debbie Merriweather and the substitute is Councillor Clayton Tyndall. Councillor Tamblyn-Saville has also advised that she has an earlier meeting starting at 6 p.m. and she will join ONS committee meeting as soon as she can. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Agenda item 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. And I don't think we've received any. If there are any members and officers who make a pecuniary declaration, they will need to leave the meeting. And if they, during the meeting, they realise they have an interest, please disclose this as soon as possible. Okay, agenda item 3 is minutes of the meeting held on 15th of December, pages 5 to 10 of your agenda. Is any member not in favour of the minutes? No, thank you. The minutes are therefore approved. Agenda item 4 is minutes for action implementation list on page 11 and 12 of your agenda. Are there any questions from members? No, thank you. Agenda item 5 is the outstanding minutes list on page 13 and 14 of your agenda. Are there any questions from members? Thank you. And item 6 is the forward plan on page 15 to 18. Just to remind members that as soon as you receive your agenda, you can ask the clerk to contact the relevant officer to provide a briefing note on a particular report on the forward plan, and or invite them or the relevant cabinet member to attend the meeting. Also, just to remind you, you can't discuss private confidential decisions in this section of the meeting. We have Alison Craig in attendance, Head of Housing, to answer any questions relating to the housing items. Alison, could you provide information on the housing strategy refresh 2021 to 26 and also the refurbishment of the independent living scheme, Larwood House reports, which are on the forward plan for the 11th of February Cabinet?
I can, thank you, Chair. I'll turn first to the Housing Strategy Refresh report. Members may be aware that there is no legal requirement to have a housing strategy for the district. The only legal requirement is to have a homeless and rough sleeping prevention strategy. However, it is judged by most local authorities as best practice to have a housing strategy in place which addresses future housing provision and need within the district. The existing district housing strategy expired in 2020, so this report will look back at what we've achieved so far in respect of the existing strategy and ensure that the priorities within the strategy are still current. The 3 priorities in the 2017 to 2020 strategy are to extend the provision of affordable housing, including social rented housing within the district, to identify and meet the needs of the ageing and vulnerable population, and to work more closely with the private rented sector. We have had noted successes with both the first and 2 of those priorities, and evidence of that will be shown in the report. That'll cover, for example, the extent of new development, the types of properties that have been made available, and how many households have been housed during the period of the strategy. It will cover the keyring scheme that is in place in respect of households with learning difficulties, the health bus, the assistive technology scheme, homeless provision, and the Watson Road facility that has been procured at the moment to extend our homelessness interim accommodation. We have unfortunately had less success during the period of this current strategy in the private rented sector, and that is because of the nature of the market. We do see lots of accidental landlords in Bassetlaw, where someone has inherited a home and chosen to let it out rather than sell or reside in that property. So that is even more of a reason for us to keep it as a priority moving forward into the next 3 years. We have had forums and done work on actions relating to the private sector again, which will be evidenced in the strategy. The report that will be taken to Cabinet will recommend that we keep all 3 of the existing priorities, but that we add a fourth priority of the Thriving Neighbourhood Strategy, which members will recall will target hotspot areas in the district, such as the Cheapside and Lowtown areas, where extensive work is needed to reduce factors such as crime and antisocial behaviour, poor housing standards, and a general low standard of living. The refreshed that Thriving Neighbourhood Strategy will underpin the housing strategy itself and will also allow us to channel resources into those identified areas. So the refreshed housing strategy will run from 2021 to 2026, giving us a 5-year period in which to deliver new measures. And the housing market, the social rented and the private rental sectors have all seen demand increasing since 2017. So this refresh will take that into account and look at more we can do to keep the market satisfied. Has anybody got any questions in relation to that report?
Are there any questions from members at this point?
David Presley.
Just more of a comment, Chair, Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Councillor Challoner, and then Councillor Presley, I think.
Yeah, it's just to say, Alison, I have seen the health bus out and about. So, yeah, that's another viable source of something and another service that this council's providing. So it is out and about.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Presley, David, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's about the affordable housing, Chairman, that we're losing it in the planning terms, whereas we can't get as many like we used to. Is that affecting us, Alison?
Are you referring to, Councillor Presley, where it's difficult to provide affordable housing on stock as part of a planning obligation?
Yes, yes.
We are seeing some affordable housing. Each site obviously is appraised as part of its merits, and obviously the local plan, which is out for consultation at the moment, is obviously exploring how we can continue to provide affordable housing and different types of affordable housing. So whether that's social rent, affordable rent, or some of the shared ownership or low cost home ownership products. Obviously the National Housing Planning Policy does direct to the more affordable ownership products these days, but as a strategic housing team we are in dialogue with other registered providers on a regular basis about encouraging them to take on schemes through the Section 106 or SIL contributions, but also where there are other parcels of land that they might want to develop outright. And obviously, indeed, ourselves have a role to play in contributing to the delivery of new affordable housing in the district through our strategic housing acquisitions policy and from the new build programme, which is in the Housing Capital programme. And we are having conversations at the moment at how we can look to influence the private rented sector as well across the district.
Thank you, Chair. That's good. And just up on that, I mean, I used to live on Cheapside, and so that's an area that we could improve on if we had the money to do it, couldn't we, Alison?
Yeah, where properties are in home ownership, it is obviously more difficult for us, and that's where obviously the Thriving Neighbourhood Strategy will hopefully work with landlords and homeowners in those areas to seek an uplift in the housing standards in those areas.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you. I certainly agree, Alison, with that. You know, new priority you've mentioned, and looking at the hotspot areas like Cheapside and Lowtown, and how we can improve the quality in the rented sector. So pleased to see that. Just a comment, really. Is there anybody else with a question? I can't see anybody indicating. No, thank you. I think you can carry on, Alison. You want to talk about
okay,
the
that's
other
fine.
paper? Thank you.
So I'll move to the refurbishment of independent living schemes report, which is focusing on Larwood House specifically. Members may recall that as part of the Priory Court report, which was at Cabinet in September 2019, members were advised that despite there being a significant demand for older persons accommodation in the district, there was little demand for some of the existing independent living schemes that the council owns and manages. And that low demand can be attributed to the size of the flats. They are predominantly bed sits. The accommodation is tired in the communal areas, the services within the scheme, and the external grounds. And indeed, some of those schemes have potential risks that have been identified through our fire risk assessment process. So obviously, building on the success of Priory Court, that report advised members that if action wasn't taken to start to improve the quality of the 4 remaining independent living schemes, then they would potentially become more unpopular, resulting in them becoming difficult to let and there being a significant income loss to the council. Larwood House was identified as the first scheme for refurbishment. It's suitably located in Worksop. It's in close proximity to local facilities, the doctor's surgery, the hospital shops, a direct bus route into town, for example. And officers' recommendations are that the scheme could be remodelled and refurbished at a reduced cost, as opposed to demolishing the scheme and rebuilding it, which is what we did at Priory Court. And Cabinet authorised myself to commence consultation with the residents at Larwood House in respect of that process. And we had an initial meeting with residents there in November 2019. And as part of the 2020-21 capital programme, an initial budget of £1.1 million was approved to commence that refurbishment. So this report gives an update on the current position. We have now procured a contractor, Fortum Construction, who work predominantly or mainly in social housing, undertaking refurbishments of this nature. They were procured in June last year, and since that appointment they've been meeting with housing services officers to design and develop the programme of works there to ensure that the development will meet the needs of the local community and provide us with the right mix of accommodation going forward. The report that goes to Cabinet will have the design brief attached to it, details of the proposed work and a revised layout for the scheme. The existing building comprises of 32 bed sits, and the plans are to knock 2 bed sits into 1, therefore creating a total of 18 one-bedroomed self-contained apartments. So we will lose the communal shared bathrooms, which are unpopular. In addition, all of those apartments will have wet rooms, either a private patio or Juliet balcony, similar to what we've seen at Priory Court. There'll be a communal lounge, kitchen, gardens, adapted bathrooms should residents' needs change over time, suitable storage for mobility scooters, the type of accommodation that we've seen at Priory Court in a refurbishment as opposed to a new build. The report goes on to explain that consultation has now commenced with the 11 remaining residents, including arrangements to decant them to alternative accommodation during the construction period. Unfortunately, residents won't be able to remain in the building during the period due to health and safety and construction risks. They'll be moved at no expense to themselves. The council will meet all of the costs associated with the move out of the scheme, and all residents decanted will be eligible to either return to Larwood House on its completion or not. We're also in negotiations at the moment with the residents of the adjoining Warden House, because likewise it's unsuitable for them to remain on site whilst the construction work is taking place, and they are considering moving permanently, which may then allow us to demolish that unit in addition to extend parking provision and the external space at Larwood House. A planning application has been submitted. That was submitted on the 18th of December, and we're anticipating that we should be able to hand over the scheme and start on site towards the end of April, the beginning of May, should everything go to timescale. And the construction period itself will take between 12 and 15 months. The capital programme that was approved at Cabinet on the 5th of January also then increases the budget for this scheme, but also sets a budget for the remaining 3 independent living schemes at Westmoreland House, Conway Gardens and Swallow Court, and similar works will take place at those schemes between 2022 and 2028 in completion. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Are there any questions from members?
Chair, Councillor Dave Challoner.
Yes, Councillor Challoner.
Thanks for that report, Alison. Is there anything in the pipeline for Westmoreland House in Burcoats? Because you've mentioned quite a few, obviously, of our properties that are being done up, and the one at Westmoreland House, by the sounds of it, is exactly a similar style as Larwood, i.e. And there's a lot of work that could be done at Westmoreland House. And the reason why I say this is because it reflects to me on all the amount of development that's been obviously passed over the last 2 years at Arworth and Burcoats. And we've just had one the other week where there's another 1,300 houses going on pit site. Surely from all this development that's going off, there should be some money coming into council somewhere so some work can be done on Westmoreland House. Thank you, Chairman.
Just to confirm, Councillor Challoner, that Westmoreland House will be the second of the independent living schemes to be refurbished. So work will commence there between 2022-23 through to 24-25. So as Larwood House draws to a close, we will have already started conversations with residents at Westmoreland House and been developing the designs so we move seamlessly from Larwood House into Westmoreland House in terms of that refurbishment programme. Likewise, we'll then move from Westmoreland House to Conway Gardens at Retford and Swallow Court at Misterton.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Alison. I'd be grateful as well if you could keep all the ward councillors up to speed with all the moves on that one, because it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I just a comment again, the consultation with tenants is obviously key, but I know the quality at Priory Court's been excellent. So if the refurbishment can create similar standards, that's got to be good. Are there any more questions from members? I can't see any at the moment.
Chair, Councillor Richardson.
Councillor Richardson, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Are they the 3 remaining ones, Westmoreland, Conway and Swallow Court, will they all be moving out? Because one of them, I think Swallow Court, is accommodation is quite different from Larwood House. It's a series of flats, isn't it, and care on one side. So will they be moved, or will the refurbishment? I don't know the other two, Alison, so I can't comment on them. Well, yeah, is the refurbishment not as great as the ones from Larwood?
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor Richardson. Each scheme is very different in its nature, and it was for that reason that we decided to start at Larwood House, primarily because it is more than half empty. There are only 11 residents in occupation at that scheme, and they are all bed sits with shared facilities, and there are some fire risks at that property. Westmoreland House then is a mixture of bedsits and one-bedroomed flats, but it will require more extensive refurbishment than both Conway Gardens and Swallow Court. Conway Gardens and Swallow Court have been refurbished in the not too distant past, and they are all one-bedroom flats, so work there will be less. But with any construction project, we would prefer to decant residents because of health and safety concerns. Whilst it is largely a building site, it's safer for people not to reside, given the nature of the work that we want to do. Refurbishment of independent living schemes is something that I've had previous experience of, as has our tenant services manager, Martin Hudson, and the contractor that we have employed. Both myself and Mr. Hudson have worked with them previously, so I'm confident that they will deliver us some high quality independent living schemes.
So, sorry, Chair. So will they be moved? Misterson's out of the way, isn't it? Been, the furthest away of our Bassett Law ones. So
it is.
If you move them out, will they be able to stay in the locality, or?
We will work with residents on an individual basis. Obviously, It depends where we have accommodation available. So, for example, some of the Larwood House residents will be looking to move into Priory Court during this period, or bungalows, or indeed Westmoreland House or Swallow Court. But we will facilitate all those moves. The residents don't need to do anything other than give us an indication of where they need to move. Likewise, when we move on to Westmoreland House, we will look for either accommodation in Harworth or in other schemes, and again we will facilitate all of those moves.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any
Chair,
more questions?
sorry, yes, Chair, just to Councillor Coulthate has requested to speak.
Thank you. If people could put it in the chat, I should be able to see the chat, but I can't see anyone indicating at the moment. But Councillor Coulthate.
Chair, just so you know, because we both have the same problem, I re-downloaded the iPad, and then it gave me all the new options, because we both had the same problem last time.
All right.
Hands, so maybe that's worth trying.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. I think this is a really good idea. You mentioned there's been a change in the budget right towards the end there. Can I ask what that increase in the budget is? What's caused that increase?
It's an increase in budget because we're wanting to do far more work than was initially considered, and the budget's been increased. So with the carry forward of the 1.1 million from 2021 into 21-22, it will be a £3 million budget for the scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments from members?
Chair, I think Councillor Naish raised his hand.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, quite last minute. Alison, yeah, it was just a quick question on, I'm assuming from the 11 residents that there are today, we'll be looking to go up towards maximum capacity once the development's been done. Has that been modelled at what capacity we would expect the development to be?
Yes, so there'll be 18 one-bedroom flats once the project is complete. So if all 11 residents want to return, they do have that opportunity, and that's one of the reasons, that was one of the drivers for the refurbishment, was that we don't have properties stood empty. That we will be looking at full occupancy of the building, because the accommodation will meet older persons' needs and demands for modern accommodation that's fit for purpose. So one of the key drivers is that we haven't got properties stood empty because they don't meet people's needs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. If there are no more questions or comments, I'm relying on other people to spot those. I'm not able to see it at the moment, but okay, thank you for that, Alison. I'm going to ask you to just stay a little bit longer. We're moving on to section A, items for discussion in public, and agenda item 7 is key decisions.
Chair.
Councillor Presley.
Can we stick on the forward plan for a minute?
Okay. Have you got a question on the forward plan?
Well, it's not a question. It's just on the Queen's buildings accommodation, and we'd have to take it in the confidential side. I would be interested in having a report on that one, Chairman, if we can, sometime.
Thank you.
Not tonight, obviously.
No. Steve Brown.
Chair, just
yes.
Obviously, that's a confidential key decision, and if it goes forward, it would come forward to the committee anyway as a matter of course, so it could be discussed at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough then, Steve.
All right, Councillor Presley. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll just ask again, are there any other questions on any other items on the forward plan?
John, I was just going to say the key decision 864, you know, the creation of the neighbourhood plan for Retford Town Centre. I'm under the impression that it's the first neighbourhood plan that's being developed for a town as opposed to sort of a village or a specific area for a town centre. So I'd be quite keen to just hear more about that if possible. It's just on page 16.
Page 16. Oh yes.
So obviously we've got a lot of neighbourhood plans in the district, but I think this is the first one that's being geared towards the town centre and thinking about what the future of the town centre looks like. So yeah. I'd definitely be keen to hear more on that one if possible.
And that's for the full council on the 4th of March. We could ask for a briefing note on that. Steve, do you think that's appropriate course of action?
We can certainly do that, Chair, if members are agreeable.
Yep, I'd like to do that. Yes, so we can find out more information.
Don't we have overview and scrutiny on the 23rd of Feb?
We do. We do.
It is fine. It's not a top priority, but it is something that's not been done before. So I'd be keen to understand more.
Yeah, but if you wanted to ask for an officer or cabinet member to come to the February one, we could have a briefing on that. This is for the council. Yeah. Councillor Presley.
Yeah, it's part of the Retford Town Centre, and it's being discussed at Retford Business Forum, James. So you could get onto that and listen to the debate. It's on every on the first Monday of every month. So the Retford Business Forum are discussing it all the time, Chairman. So it might be James listening into that as well. It is the first one where they're going to have the part of a town. Yeah.
Okay, James, you'd like a briefing at the next meeting in February. I think.
Yeah, that would be welcomed.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on the forward plan? No, thank you. I'll start again on section A. So items for discussion in publics. Item 7 is key decisions of extraordinary cabinet on the 5th of January 2021, pages 19 to 26. And Alison is still in attendance to answer any questions relating to housing key decisions. Starting on page 19, we've got the Housing Capital Programme 2021/22 to 2025/26, key decision 794. The Cabinet resolved that 1, the proposed Housing Capital Programme 2021/22 to 2025/26, as set out in the Appendix 1 of the report, be approved, and 2, the indicative programmes for 2022/23 to 2025/26 in Appendix 1 of the report be approved, and 3, the report be recommended to the Extraordinary Council meeting on 28th of January 2021 for approval. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? Okay, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. And the next one is the Housing Revenue Account Budget 2021/22 and future years to 2025/26, key decision 842 at the bottom of page 20. The Cabinet resolved that 1, the Housing Revenue Account Budget for 2021/22 as set out in Appendix 1 of the report be approved. 2, the indicative housing revenue accounts budgets set out in Appendix 1 of the report for 2022/23 to 2025/26 be approved. And 3, the approved rent charges for 2021/22 shown in paragraph 3.10 of the report be noted. And 4, the minimum level of HRA reserves to remain at £1.3 million in recognition of the overall